what's up, y'all? Corey Congilio here, and I've been teaching guitar for 20-ish years. One of the things I always found when an intermediate or even late beginner student would come to me and they wanted to play some rock solos, blues solos, is that their bending was just terrible. And they said they took lessons before, they bought guitar courses, and no one showed them proper bending technique. Generally, the students were always under pitch with their bends, they weren't strong, and they didn't really understand that this is such a vital and important cornerstone of rock, blues, and country playing. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about ways that not only you can practice your bends, but you can also just use simple bends with whole notes over top of rock and blues solos, and you won't, as we say, blow your wad too quickly. Okay, so let's jump into a lesson, but before we do, click the link below for more guitar lessons and guitar courses, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, so let's take a look at how I used bends over this one chord little blues shuffle. Just an A chord over and over again, not a 12 bar or anything like that, just for practice sake, okay? And what I always like to stress is that if you're playing pentatonic scales, which you most likely will be, at least for a starting point in blues, you're going to be bending from one note in that scale to the other, and generally it's a whole step. So in this case, we're bending from this G note here on the 8th fret, 2nd string, up to the A. And let's talk about how I attack that. So take a look at my hand. It's really mashing the guitar neck and sandwiching the strings, and I've received, plenty of colorful comments over the years about my thumb being around the guitar, but look at our favorite guitar players, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all those kinds of folks. We wrap our thumb around for strength. Sometimes those types of players will even use it to fret. I've been guilty of that too. I learned it in a Tommy Emmanuel course, and he can't be wrong, right? So the idea here is that you want to make sure that you're, what I like to say is pushing up with the finger and down with the thumb. But let's set it up. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're playing out of this A minor pentatonic scale. A lot of us know that, right? So we're playing on that 2nd string, and I like to stack my fingers behind it. So if we're bending with the 3rd finger, which I encourage in this scale, a lot of people will play the scale with their pinky, which I also encourage. But watch Jimmy Page or Hendrix or Clapton, they never bent with their pinky, or rarely would, if ever. Because that 3rd finger has the strength, and that's what this sound is all about. So I stack my fingers up behind it and wrap the thumb around, and I cradle it. And I literally push down with the thumb and up with the fingers. And I want to achieve the note a whole step up. And you're saying to yourself by now, Corey, I've watched your videos. You play some really fun licks and you teach some cool stuff. Why are you teaching something so basic? Well, it's because it's so overlooked. I've taught hundreds of students, all age ranges, all ability levels, all different styles. And so often I hear people play a lick like I did in the opening track, and they do that. It's not in tune. It's got to be in tune. And the reason we practice it like that so much, notes, or what I call destination, bend. Destination, bend. And I was a little flat there. That's the sound you want to get eventually. So when you're going for broke, you can dig in and your muscle memory kicks in, and you really will start to kind of just be able to put your hands there. You want to try that any place where there's a great whole step bend, like from the C to D. There's our destination. Yeah. The first string is where it gets kind of tough. Let's take the C to D, or sorry, the D to E here on the 1st string, 10th fret, up to the 12th fret, 1st string as well. I get it. When you're first starting out or you haven't been playing that long, these strings feel like razors digging into your fingers, okay? And what you really want to do is maybe consider, as I adjust my chair a little bit, maybe consider trying to letter gauge the string. Whatever it takes to get that pitch happening in your ear associated with your hand, that's what's most important. You have plenty of time to go up in string gauge if you want. I constantly am back and forth between string gauges. These are 9.5s on this. I have another guitar that has 11s on it. I have guitars that have 10s, 10.5s. I've never done the Billy Gibbons thing and gone super low, like 8 or 7, and I've never done 12s, but I have some flat wound strings on guitars, and the bend is always the same. It's just gotta be in pitch. Another thing I should mention too is that when we're talking about different guitars, scale length is really important. Now, scale length is the distance between the nut and the saddle. And more of a Gibson type scale would be a 24.9. So yeah, is that right? 24 3/4, that's what it is. So it's a shorter scale than say a 25.5, like a Fender type. Most Paul Reed Smiths are 25. This one is a 25.594. There's a big story behind that I'll let Paul or somebody from PRS tell you. But it's a little easier to bend on Gibson-esque instruments. The scale is a little shorter. So consider that. A lot of times on my Fender instruments, I'll put a little lighter string to make it a little easier for me in the transition, because you really feel it when you go from instrument to instrument. It's pretty crazy. And why I settled for 9.5s on this, I needed to do a lot of bends on tour that were like, really, really high and sustaining, and I wanted to get there without a lot of pain, but still had enough thickness on the string to generate a good tone. So that's why I opted for this. It was an experiment. I went from 11s all the way here and back. I play around quite a bit. Thankfully, I can set my guitar up enough that, it's not too much of a problem. Just tweak the neck here or there. But I have plenty of good luthiers I can take it to. Okay, so let's check out those other examples. The rock stuff, really, it's the same approach as I did this blues example. I think it's fun, though, to consider that all we need to do sometimes is play a bend. And really, that's going to get us some mileage in our solos, as long as the bend sounds strong and really confident and in tune. Okay, let's play some more. All right, so before we talk about bending over a rock track, which is really the same as a blues track, I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about my trusty SG here that I get so many questions about. This guitar started its life as a 64 Junior. You can tell it's just got the wraparound tailpiece, and this is an aftermarket variety. And it was owned originally, well, not originally, but it was bought by Ryan Warner, who's a great Nashville guitar player, son of Steve Warner, who you probably have heard of, and if not, check him out. He's a monster. They both are incredible. And he bought this guitar. I think it was painted white originally. Somebody had routed it out, put some DiMarzios or something in it, and he liked it pretty well. He said, hey, it's already chopped up. Somebody kind of destroyed the value, the vintage value of this. I'm going to have it painted Pelham blue, and I believe the guitar builder Jeff Sen did it. And this one's been great because it's got that great mid-60s neck that gets chunky here. They just did a killer job on the color. So this is a fun guitar. That's the story. I still have never opened it up to find out what pickups are in it. Everybody asks me. I think they're Lawler Imperials. Let's talk about bending a little bit more. What's important? Pitch, strength, attack. Make sure you're really digging in and testing that note that you're going to. Because if you're going to play like a Shook Me All Night Long kind of thing, you got to make sure that opening bend is in tune, and that muscle memory we talked about will really get you there. Plus, if you're playing double stops like these kind of things, again, you got to have them really in tune. Your hands got to be strong. One of the things I always tell students is try to break a string, and if you do, then you went too far. And if you break some strings, they're not expensive. You go buy some singles, replace them, and get back to practicing your bending. Okay, that's the deal with this guitar, and that's me talking about bending over a rock track. All right, let's talk about another track and another guitar. So when I think about playing bends over a rock track, I like to think of what Mike Campbell would do. He's one of my favorite guitar players of all time. he's known for keeping it simple and just playing the most perfect ideas all the time in some of those amazing songs, all of those amazing Tom Petty songs. And he would most likely play a really cool vintage guitar, and this is one of my favorite vintage guitars. It's a real 64 Junior. Not that that other one isn't, but it's not modified. There's been no router taken to this one. This is one of my favorite guitars because it just always sounds great for anything. They're kind of like tellies on steroids. I watched a video with Phil X one time, and he said he thought what was really interesting, I guess this goes from Malcolm Young too, since there's no pickup in the neck, there's no magnetic pull happening on the strings, so they vibrate even more freely, which I think is great, which is probably why Esquires sound the way they do too. I love this guitar. I thought it sounded great for this track, and you know, the Greer folks, the Greer fans will ask about my rig. I'm always using generally a 2-rock of some sort or a vintage Fender amp. I like clean single-channel amplifiers with pedals. The Universal Audio Aux is taking care of the cabinet simulation. It works really, really well for me. And I'll shine the camera in a bit on these two pedals I don't get to play too often, but I really like them. The delay is coming from the Greer Black Tiger. It's, I think, one of the best analog delays out there. But man, this thing really sounds great. I'll turn the mix up a little bit. You hear how it's almost in the background? That's the sign of a great delay. The overdrive pedal is a Rockett Touch Overdrive pedal. I think they just reintroduced the Touch Overdrive. It's one of their smaller pedals. I have the green one. I think it's gray or black now, but it feels great. Great compression. I mean, the gain's only on about 10 o'clock right there. I'll turn it up a little bit. Add the delay. Turn the mix up a little bit on that delay. I'm using my toes. I don't have another camera set up on that right now. Yeah, for the few times I get to do that, all that sounds actually pretty great with these two pedals. Really great sustain from it. And when you're bending, make sure you keep it strong and keep it in tune. Hey, so thanks for watching this lesson on bending. Hopefully you learned a little bit. I mean, it seems elementary that like you should be able to just bend, but really it's very physical and it requires a lot of practice. Not only it's a physical practice, but it's an ear training practice as well. So hopefully you got something out of it, and maybe you were entertained by some of my discussions about my favorite guitars.